Hey guys, it's Tom Bucks. Welcome to MST.TV. Whether you like it or not, Inzektor is going to be getting a new card, and we're moving into phase 2 of the creative card project, which is what kind of card are they getting? Everyone thought that, oh, you're just going to get a new monster. One monster's not going to fix it. Well, guess what? It's not just a monster we get to choose from. We get to choose from monster spells or trap cards. MST.TV. So among the 3 different card types of monster spells and traps, which one of them are most likely going to give them a broken card? We're not looking at a good card, a broken card, so that they can actually play in this day and age in Yu-Gi-Oh! We want them to be tier 1, then it has to be one that has the most amount of potential, because we don't know exactly where the design is going to go, but you know, I can kind of speculate. We're going to guess some of these effects just so that they can play in today's age. Now let's jump back into the past for a little bit. Let's just play a little catch up in case you guys don't know what Inzektors do. They were the World Championship deck of 2012. When they came out, Dragonfly and Hornet were the most destructive duo combo that there was. It was just basically pop an entire board, spam the whole board full of monsters, and try to punch for game. And technically, you don't really get it that easy because you had to normal summon out the Dragonfly. It was susceptible to 2 hand traps at the time. There's only 2, which was Effect Veiler, which essentially just did not let you equip anymore. That was one really good thing about it. And the second thing was DD Crow. In case you already had the Hornet in the graveyard or a Ladybug in the graveyard, you were able to crow that away so that your opponent has to equip from, I guess, the hand. I believe it doesn't target it. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it definitely changes up the mechanic quite a bit. But nowadays, look at the gauntlet of hand traps we have now. We have Veilers, we have Gamma, which will pop the monster and negate it. We have Imperm, which is essentially just another Veiler. We have Ash, which will prevent the monster from being summoned out. Although Ash, I would say it would be the weakest one of them all. Ghost Ogre, which is pretty effective, taking out the monster and getting rid of, well, the potential for equipping. It was huge. If you can actually do all of these things, well, that's more than a DD Crow and a Veiler, so you can handle them on the field much easier, which makes it so that they don't stick on the field as long. That's what we're dealing with in 2020. So compared to back in 2012, just way more to answer to them, and now you're dealing with boards which have a ton of negations. Negation boards weren't a thing back in the day. So that makes it so that whether you're going first or second, you're going to face some level of disruption. And since that this whole strategy is focused on the Dragonfly getting its effect off, that's what we're going to be focusing most of our effects targeting. We're going to see if we can actually make Dragonfly broken again to the point where we can put this card back on the ban list. Before we jump into our speculated effects for some of these potential cards, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit subscribe, ding notification bell, and let's break into this one. Of my choices here, I think monsters have the second best chance of giving them a broken card. Second best. Spells definitely have my bet on giving the best card possible. I think spells are probably the best way, but there is a danger with going with spells as well because equips are such a big thing in Inzektors too, so that makes me very skeptical. And then there is traps. If you hate Inzektors, vote for traps because traps are way too slow anyway. It's not like you're gonna go through. And then there's extra deck, which is like the surprise factor because extra deck monsters can go in any direction. So let's talk about monsters first. Essentially, Dragonfly is probably your best bet. Because Dragonfly, I think there's no monster that's going to be better. It just summons out an Inzektor monster as long as you're able to send whatever that's equipped to it to the graveyard. And as long as something falls off of it, you're good to go. You summon out another monster as long as it's not Dragonfly. But remember the mechanic of Inzektors. They can either equip onto stuff, like all the high level stuff, they can always just activate, equip straight onto an Inzektor monster. That's cool. There's also the smaller Inzektor monster, which are able to activate and equip any of the Inzektor cards in your graveyard or from your hand. So those are the 2 different kinds of equipping. And then in terms of if they're equipped, they gain additional levels, they gain attack, they gain stats, they gain some sort of effect. And then there's also the detaching effect as well, such as Hornet and Ladybug. One is a level modulator and the other is a pop. And of course, the Hornet pop is one of the most iconic things about the deck. So we have offensive strategies and we have level modulations, but we don't exactly have anything defensive. And the thing about, if you want to give them a good effect monster that can be equipped, it needs 2 things in this day and age in Yu-Gi-Oh! First thing that they need is something that can equip itself. They can activate in the hand to equip straight onto the card. The reason why this is important is because what if you get Veilered? What if you get hit by an Imperm? These are very common situations and it falls off. Your monster's effect is negated everything is awful. So the first thing I would say is necessary is you need something a bit more defensive, a bit more protective. And so what if you have a new Inzektor card? All it does is that you can equip itself onto a monster, and while it's equipped to that monster, it prevents it from being targeted. For instance, you can't get hit by the Imperm, you can't get hit by the Veiler. It's likely that your opponent's going to activate it anyway and do it anyway, but the point is that you can equip it onto the monster by your own effects so that the card won't fall off. And here's the other thing. We're going to go into the realm of Altergeist and Subterror. You know how these guys, they can use like Protocol and then their stuff will just never be negated? What if the offered effect, where if you activate and send it to the graveyard, it's a defensive effect, and this defensive effect is that the equipped monster cannot have its activated effect negated. In that sense, you basically bypass any form of negation, whether it be a Veiler, whether it be any of those problematic cards. You bypass it, and now your Dragonfly will be able to resolve for the rest of the turn, no problem. And that's actually a pretty big factor. Now, Dragonfly itself isn't exactly very strong, but it is a summoning gate for most of your Inzektor cards. And luckily, Dragonfly can't summon more Dragonflies, or else you get that endless spam of endless Dragonflies, which is pretty crazy. But being, modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, it's likely that this kind of effect is going to be hard once per turn, unless they stick with old school, kind of like what they did with GB, where they aren't once per turn. I think most of the new stuff, they all just have these once per turn clauses, which makes it very difficult to use. But that's one way to guarantee that your Inzektor will resolve basically for the rest of the game. But then there's also another way. What if you don't go in the negation room? What if you go like complete ham? What if you give them another Dragonfly-like effect, but rather than being like the monster on the field that does it, it's the equip that actually does it? I mean, we have cards like the Infernoble cards, like Durandal. Durandal, you send it and he basically functions as a Rhoda from an equip spell. In that sense, what if when you send the card into the graveyard, it gives you two choices? Because there's a lot of times that you get the choice of adding a card or special summoning. What if you get two choices? One is that you equip a new card straight from the deck onto the field so it doesn't get Ash, for one thing. Or the other one would be you summon a monster out of the deck instead. So you get to either equip a card or summon a card after you send the card into the graveyard. That is the other option. And then maybe it even equips itself back onto the card. But again, it's once per turn. That is the limitation, because it's modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, guys. That is some ways that you can actually really just abuse the card. Like, we'll have to take away the negation effect. Maybe we'll keep the anti-targeting part, but we'll definitely take away the negation. Because if you actually add that with negation, you're just basically giving free summons that cannot be interacted. Basically, it almost feels like spell speed 4. That's a potential angle, maybe, that they could go. And in terms of like the stat line of the monster, it has to be like a level 3. Go with the level 3, stick with the theme of level 3, just so that it's just easier. Because if you got the 1, which is the Firefly, you got 2, which is Ladybug, and 3, you have Hornet, and then you have 4, you have Hopper. And these are the ones that have some kind of effect. And I really think that just stick with the 3 so that we can manage the level better, and maybe actually use, Exabeetle or something like that. So those would be my best choices for monster-based effects. In terms of spells, though, for spells we're looking into equips and field. I think quick play and normal could probably fall into the same categories within the equip. It's just that the playstyle of Inzektors, they play with the equip cards. Inzektor Sabers, Inzektor Tomahawk, and they also have the Inzektor Crossbow. Those are the 3 main equips that they had. I think the only one that really saw play was probably the Saber, and that was it, because that one fetches cards out of the graveyard, and usually you equip it onto the Dragonfly so that you can pop it with the Hornet, so you can get free cards and add more cards back from hand, from grave, and it was just really, really easy. But it doesn't exactly work in this day and age in Yu-Gi-Oh! We want Dragonfly to resolve. We need something to be a bit more defensive or a bit more consistent. And if we're looking into consistency, let's look into Infernoble Arms Durandal. If you can get the Durandal to basically function as a Rhoda, you can kind of get the same deal here with the Inzektor equip. What if the Inzektor equip is able to send itself to the graveyard, much like an Inzektor, basically much like the Inzektor monsters themselves, except that this one, if you send it to the graveyard, you're able to summon straight from the deck. This is going to cause people to burn ashes, which is fine, but that means you can also normal summon out your Dragonfly, and kind of work your way up from there. In other words, you can burn hand traps because you have multiple ways of summoning out a lot of monsters, and being able to tether out a dragonfly is the key thing here. A lot of people want some way to summon out the dragonfly, but what if you also gave it an equip that can send itself? In other words, it can function as a double summoning effect right away. Summon one from dragonfly, summon another one. You spam 3 monsters with that effect, and that doesn't seem too bad, but it needs a little bit more protection in my opinion. Although it would be fun that you can summon out a dragonfly with the effect, so that even if they negate the dragonfly, you still summon out another dragonfly, and now they've burned their hand trap, and now they're going to have to deal a second dragonfly, which gives you a full board. So there is that option, which is pretty cool. And you can also banish it from the graveyard, maybe protect your monster from being destroyed by a card effect or being destroyed in general. So, you know, it gives you that additional protection from stuff like Gamma, from stuff like Ghost Ogre. That's the direction I'm thinking of in terms of protecting this card. So that's actually a decent option. But another thing is, it has to carry the Inzektor name so that Centipede can search it out, giving you that consistency. Even if you don't open with a dragonfly, the Centipede can lead into the dragonfly. Rather than add the dragonfly to hand, it can add Hornet instead, or add Ladybug and get those card effects. And since it's modern day Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's likely that some of these effects are going to be once per turn. And this is one effect that I think has a pretty decent chance of actually giving it a chance to play. Or since it's, you know, Inzektors is such an old archetype, make it the old school once per turn, you know, once per turn per copy. Then it technically just wouldn't be once per turn. But here's the other angle. What if you look into field spells? All right, if it was a field spell, I want it to be more like Union Carrier. I want it to be more like Trickstar Light Stage. Search out the Inzektor straight from the deck. Then you can get your dragonfly every time, or better yet, if you want to break it, summon it straight from the deck. You're going to burn ashes like no tomorrow if you're going to do something like that. And the thing is, they can't ogre it because it's on the activation. Nothing they can do about it about the ogre. And then give it a protection effect. And this is kind of like pushing it, but let me know what you guys think. What if the equipped Inzektor monster are unaffected by card effects, unaffected by your opponent's card effects? It has to be equipped. In other words, if you use like a Hornet and then you send it off and it's no longer equipped, then it's no longer protected. But that means that the monster that is activating its effect should keep an equip on itself, just so that it can keep using its effect. That is the other angle, which I think would be a field spell that fetches out a card and protects it as long as it is equipped, which kind of fits within the realm of Inzektor playstyle, which is playing with equips. And that may even bring more people playing the Sabers. Maybe people are going to play Smoke Grenade. They're going to equip the Smoke Grenade, and then they're going to get like a Hornet, pop the Smoke Grenade. That'd be kind of neat. Rip a card out of your opponent's hand, maybe do full combo and build a board. It'd be nice to turn the deck into combo, but I know it's more of like an aggro control to some degree. Back in the day, it was like, it's definitely like that deck that had a threshold where if you can't beat Inzektors, you can't really play the game. Much like Masterpiece, much like Thunder Dragon, Colossus, much like those, like they are the one that set the bounds of what is available for the meta. And maybe this will change it up. So that's why I think like equip and field spells are most likely going to be the candidates, but these effects can be pushed on to, say, a normal or a quick play. Okay, trap cards. I really don't think trap cards are going to be worth it, but if you are going to vote for a trap card, you want to play a trap style Inzektor, I don't know what you're really on. I mean, they have Zect Conversion, which is not a bad trap card. It literally turns your monster into a Snatch Steal, which is too slow. It's a trap card, it's too slow. But if it was a trap card that was good for Inzektors, it needs to be able to activate from hand or be able to be placed face up onto the field. And it might even need to be able to simulate as an equip for it to even be viable. But I don't even know what's actually that great. Or it can simulate the entire interaction between a Dragonfly and a Hornet. It has to pop one of your opponent's cards and you get to summon out a card. If you don't pop your opponent's card, you don't get to summon a card. I really don't know where I can think about a trap card for Inzektors because it's just not within their realm. What if you send an equip card and then you nuke your opponent's board? That's actually not too bad. That actually makes me think a lot of people would actually complain. Like, what if you send an equip card and you get to blow up their entire front row? Like, send their entire front row to the graveyard if you send an equip card. That would actually change up so that the Inzektor would be a control-based matchup more than anything else, where you have to deal with the back row or else you just can't really play Yu-Gi-Oh! In general. That is how broken trap cards have to be in order for it to even have some level of impact if it's not part of the key winning strategy. Because trap cards, if it doesn't have a proper follow-up, you don't win simply by getting rid of your opponent's cards. You have to win by pushing for game and being part of the combo strategy of the deck. And that's just exactly how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is these days. Finally, for extra deck, it's either a Link or an Xyz. I don't see them putting them a Synchro, I don't see them giving them a Fusion, so it's Link or an Xyz. So if it's a Link, people are asking for a Link 1, but what's an actual good Link 1? Like, the good Link 1s are like Trap Trick Sarah, Magical Musket. Those are the main two that I would say are good Link 1s. There's Link Rebos, which are generic, but like that doesn't really work. The ones that have active effects are decent on the board would be within the realms of Magical Muskets and the Trap Tricks. So looking into that, if we want to make a Link 1 for the Inzektors, it has to be good enough where it can be standalone and do multiple things. Perhaps it is the combo starting piece. So it can either have an effect where, first of all, it can summon out a card. All right, it needs to be able to, because by itself it really doesn't really do anything. So it needs to be able to bring out a Dragonfly or a Centipede or whatever that linked into it. It can bring it back. That's point one. Point two is that it needs to do something whenever something is equipped. If something is equipped, it needs to be able to offer maybe some form of chain blocking thanks to its effect. And it's a chain block which can't really be interacted with by like Ash Blossom or stuff along those lines, so that your other monsters and whatever it's pointed to, maybe it's protected from being targeted by your opponent's card effects. That essentially would be similar to some of the previously mentioned card effects as well. Because if you're able to protect your monster from being targeted and being able to be destroyed, basically it's like giving Dragonfly and giving him extra armor to play, and that would be really good. Imagine just summoning a Centipede and then just sending it to the graveyard, going into this guy. This guy summons out a Dragonfly from the deck and straight into the field. That'd be really cool. And then now that Dragonfly is protected, you can use all the spammy effect all you want. That's a decent Link 1. But then again, your Link 1 is likely susceptible to getting ashed, and that is a big weakness. So you're gonna have to work with that, and somehow getting an additional summon in Inzektors is very hard. If you have actually watched the World Championship 2012 game, once your normal summon is done, there is no further extension. It makes it very difficult. Maybe there is more, because nowadays there's also the copy of what's that card, the Cocoon of Ultra Evolution. Maybe you'll see play with that card. I get that that card didn't really see very much play, but it's likely that if they want to support some of their older cards, they might make that card a bit more viable. It's possible. It's very much possible, and it's also like a generic summon card as well. So you gotta think about that in mind. Another kind of card, I think this one has a very interesting mechanic. I think of this one as a bit more offensive, kind of like a personal gimmick that I thought about for Inzektors. And a rank 3 Xyz or a rank 5 Xyz. Basically, it's an Xyz monster that, as long as you're using Inzektor monsters, you don't really have to care about the levels. That's not fair, because they already have a bit of a level modulation problem. Just look at Exabeetle. It's like a rank 6, and you basically have to equip a bunch of stuff to actually get to that card with Inzektors, which is kind of awkward. So ignoring that, so as long as you can ignore it, because Ladybug modifies levels, the equipped monster modifies levels, you can ignore level modulation. Okay. And then what if you detach a card to pop a card? Basically, think about this Xyz monster like a Hornet that is an Xyz monster. You detach a card to pop a card, and you can special summon, or basically you can special summon out an Inzektor monster from your graveyard. So essentially it turns your Dragonfly that summons out the Centipede that maybe pops another card, and then you get to overlay the two into this new monster, detach a card, pop another card, summon back that Dragonfly, basically extending further with the whole Dragonfly pop the entire board thing, except that it doesn't really generate lethal. It's just there as like full board wipe. That's maybe, but you know, this one is obviously susceptible to so many different forms of negation. But if you do not get negated, and the thing is, you got to make sure that this pop effect does not target. Make the interaction hard for your opponent. Like, they have to commit stuff. If they could negate it, then they would have negated it already. But make sure that they have to commit stuff to actually stop you. That is probably what I think would be actually really good. And yeah, that's all I really have for potential effects. Let me know what you guys think would be a really crazy effect down in the comment section below. But personally, I think spells would provide them with the most amount of coverage that they would need to be a really good deck, because spells is the most versatile in terms of like digging cards out. So spells are probably going to be the ones that get my vote. If it's a field spell, I really hope that it can be a field spell. And that's all I really got for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash the thumbs up button. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, stick around for like upcoming giveaway. I'm gonna try to post it on Friday. Just give me a little bit of a breathing room here, and I will see you guys in the next one. Stay chill, guys.